and welcome to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center's TaKe Leadership Series. TaKe means bamboo in Japanese, known for its strength, resilience, and flexibility during difficult times, something I think we can all relate to right now. My name is Deidre Teagarden. I'm the director here at the center, where our mission is to inspire people to find the hero within themselves through the legacy of our Nisei veterans. You can find out more information about the center on our website at nvmc.org. We are so thrilled to have all of you with us today for another fantastic speaker. We're thrilled to have the president of the University of Hawaii, David Lassner, with us this afternoon. Now, before I introduce President Lassner, I just wanted to go over a few quick housekeeping items as we are still having people joining our call. Number one, wanted to let you know that President Lassner is accepting questions. So feel free to send in your questions as they pop into mind. You can use that little question box at the bottom left of your screen, and we will get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Also wanted to let you know that this is being recorded and will be available on our Nisei Veterans Memorial Center YouTube channel in about a week and a half. So we encourage you to go on there and take a look at some of the other talks that we've done that you may have missed. You know, we wouldn't be able to do this or any of our events if it weren't for our generous sponsors. So we just want to give a big mahalo to HouseMart, Central Pacific Bank Foundation, VIP Food Service, Maui Health Systems, Pasha Hawaii, Maui Sons and Daughters of the Nisei Veterans, Service Rentals, Arazumi Brothers, Abbey Carpet of Maui, TJ's Warehouse, Mid-Pacific Pest Control, Maui Disposal, Puro Water Specialty Company, Sei Designs, Munikio Haraga, RT Tanaka Engineers, and of course, the Maui News. We thank you all so very much. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, the reason you have all tuned in. And it's a great audience again today. We have people from Maui, from Honolulu, from across the state, the mainland, as well as Japan. And we have a lot of UH alums on the call, so we're excited to have you here. So David Lassner is the 15th president of the University of Hawaii. And in that capacity, he leads the University of Hawaii 10-campus system, as well as the flagship research university, UH Manoa. Lassner's current agenda includes a focus on helping more Hawaii residents earn college credentials and developing an innovation sector to strengthen the state's economy while creating high-quality jobs. He is also advancing UH's commitments to sustainability and becoming a model Indigenous serving university. Lassner began working at UH in information technology in 1977, eventually becoming UH's first chief information officer and vice president for IT. Lassner is also a member of the university's cooperating graduate faculty and has taught both online and in person in computer science, communications, business, and education. He is currently a commissioner of the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education, a board member for the National Association of System Heads, and a member of the Board of Governors of the East-West Center. He also serves on the boards of Aloha United Way and the Blood Bank of Hawaii. In his prior positions, Lassner played an active leadership role in a variety of local, national, and international information and communications technology organizations. He served on the boards of Hawaii's High Technology Development Corporation and Public Broadcasting Service Affiliate, and he chaired the state's Broadband Task Force. An active principal investigator, Lassner led Hawaii's major statewide project funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce that interconnected all public schools, libraries, and campuses on 6 islands with fiber optics. He has support from the National Science Foundation for over 20 years, focused on research and education, networking, and cyber infrastructure. He is a principal investigator for the Maui High Performance Computing Center and for the Pacific Disaster Center. And in all, he has served as a principal investigator for more than $400 million in extramural funding. He earned an AB in economics, summa cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa, followed by an MS in computer science with a university fellowship from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He earned his PhD in communication and information sciences from the University of Hawaii. Please help me give a warm virtual Maui welcome to President David Lassner. Sir, it's lovely to have you on the program today.
Aloha, and it's a treat to be here, and I'm thumbing through the attendee list, and it's wonderful to see so many colleagues and friends. So ask me easy questions, please. I want to say a little bit about what I'm really focused on now, which is the work for the university and to help take the state to a better place post-pandemic, not just than we are today, but really than we were before. So I've got about 11 slides I'll talk through, and then I'm looking forward to the conversation after that. Okay, let's see how we do here. And okay, got him?
Perfect.
Okay, thanks. So I think what this is about is for leaders and everyone in Hawaii to really think about what we're trying to navigate toward. And I'll make some comments as we go along, but I don't think that what we are shooting for is to return Hawaii to what we were in February. I think we have this opportunity to try to steer ourselves to somewhere a little bit different. So let me say a little bit first about what it's been like to lead one of Hawaii's most complicated organizations through this pandemic over the past 7 or so months and counting. So like much of the state and the country, we pivoted online. In fact, UH was the first organization in the state to make the decision that we were going to need to go fully online before the end of March in order to make it through the rest of the semester. And I just can't say enough about our faculty, our staff who supported our faculty, and our students, all of whom showed incredible resilience. At the same time, they were struggling to find their way through the semester online. And I have to say, many of our faculty had not taught online before March, and they had about 2 weeks to figure out how to get ready with the help of their colleagues and friends. They were also actively engaged in the community. So I won't read all my bullet points, you can see these, but we had people as volunteers helping their neighbors, their families, their friends, nonprofits, the homeless, volunteering at the unemployment insurance emergency center that was set up by the state, lots of things. At the same time, our expertise was a really significant part of the state's response. So you can't really get through a week without reading about the UH Economic Research Organization and their work to help us understand the economy and recover. UH did the contact tracing training for the Department of Health. We were and are providing telehealth support for the DOE within the schools. They don't have enough healthcare workers in the schools. Our testing lab was just in the news, so we can now begin to innovate in testing, and we have faculty working on vaccines as well. One of the first things we were really worried about actually was not our own students, but the graduating high school class of 2020. They lost most of the last quarter, and the DOE was much less prepared than we were to pivot online. We had all of the infrastructure in place already, and with the help of these foundations you see named, We ran a summer program that served over 3,000 students, giving them opportunities to take free classes, but also if they didn't think they wanted to go to college, to try to help figure out what they wanted to do. And while we went through the summer setting up all of our classrooms for social distancing, the condition of the pandemic and COVID in this state led us to move pretty much totally online, with the exceptions that you see. The only classes we're really offering in person are those that have to be. And something I'm incredibly proud of is this line at the bottom. Amazingly, with nearly 50,000 students spread across 10 campuses on all the islands, we have had only 42 confirmed cases of COVID. And I don't know if we're smart or lucky, but I'll take it. Let me just say a few words about this vision without reading it to you, and you can read it while I say a few words. This arose from our Board of Regents work with the administration on what we call an integrated academic and facilities plan. That is bringing together what we have to do for the state of Hawaii. And as I started reflecting on what we have to do to help lead the state out of this pandemic, I find this is a really useful guidepost with just a couple of sentences about a future for Hawaii that we really are comfortable with within the UH system, and then what our role is within the university to help make it happen. And you can see this was done about 3.5 years ago, but it's still very relevant to our thinking today about our responsibilities to the state. So this is what we have honed in on that's guiding our work today. And one of the reasons we really need to narrow our focus is I think everybody is aware of the economic crisis faced by the state. I just read our unemployment rate is once again the worst in the country, plummeting quickly from just a year ago. We were among the 2 or 3 best in the country. And we realize that the economic crisis, there's an economic shortfall for state government of over $2 billion, and that's our major source of funding for public higher education in the state. We really need to think carefully about what we need to do. And so these 4 priorities, I'm going to elaborate with one slide on each of them, but you can see we're looking at education and economic development at the same time. So the first point I want to make is the need to engage more Hawaii residents in post-secondary education and training. We know across the country and in Hawaii, this is the most powerful enabler of social and economic mobility, and it lasts through generations. Again, I won't read all of the bullets, but you can see the positive impacts are both economic and social. And we are already seeing this play out in this pandemic. The data is very clear that your likelihood of becoming unemployed was much higher based on the lesser amount of education you have. So if you didn't have a high school diploma, you were much quicker to become unemployed. If you only had a high school diploma, next. If you had some college but no degree, next. And if you had a college degree, you were least likely to become unemployed. And when we look at the graphs nationally, just over these last 7 months, the same curve applies to getting jobs back. This is the best tool that we have. And you can see these other positive impacts for society. The investment that the states make in public higher education pays off in taxes, in less social services, less incarceration. And when we look forward, this data comes from Georgetown, which has the best study of what it's going to look like moving forward, that 70% of the jobs will require some post-secondary education. That's not necessarily a bachelor's degree or even an associate degree. That could just be a high quality certificate. but this is what I find of most concern. We know that the jobs will require some post-secondary education, and our working age adults do not have that level. So that creates huge gaps for us that impact both our citizenry, but also our employers. And lastly, I want to highlight that this isn't just about training people for jobs. A high quality college education, such as what is earned at our community colleges and our four-year universities, equips students with these skills that every employer needs regardless of the job, and that help our graduates engage as empathetic and contributing citizens in anything that they do across the state. The second point I want to make is to take this much more specifically. And while almost every college degree has value, we have a responsibility also to educate people for the specific jobs that we need in this state. So we all know about the teacher shortage, and I'm just advocating within UH, we need to step up our game, and we need to educate more teachers via multiple pathways, from working age adults who are already in the workforce, people who have degrees, say in the sciences, can become science teachers. They can come from our community colleges into our universities, but it is critical that we educate more of our teachers here. I think many of you have seen the data that tells us that about 50% of the teachers that we hire in this state leave the profession within 5 years. And the highest percentage of those are the teachers we bring in from outside the state. We know that when we can hire teachers educate and hire teachers from within our communities, those are the ones who are most likely to stick with it in the professions. Same thing goes for healthcare. All of these are areas of concern, and especially during and after a pandemic, we're going to need even more help in all of these. The doctor shortage we see often played out, and the nursing shortage, but all of these helping professionals have openings within our state, including some very entry-level professions like nurses assistants as well. The third area I want to highlight for this is construction, design in the built environment. So we have a habit here in Hawaii of trying to lead out of recession with construction, and that is something that the state can fund to spur economic development. We at UH need to make sure we're educating the skilled laborers and the architects and engineers. And this is an example of where we need to do things differently. We know what we are facing with climate change and encroaching sea levels and the king tides that we're seeing right now across the state, and especially on Oahu. We need to be educating the architects and engineers and designers who are going to help us develop a built environment that prepares us for a future in which climate change is a reality. Third, and Deidre mentioned this in the opening, is we need to diversify and strengthen our economy. I personally don't know anyone who wants to bring back over 10 million tourists, each of whom are trying to spend as little as possible. It impacts our communities, our environments, our citizen experience. And while there is no single silver bullet that's going to replace this, and while we know tourism is going to be part of the economy, and I'll close this slide with that, we also have opportunities to develop other sectors. So I've been hanging around with enough economists. What I will say is that when we get this right, we will be developing economic sectors that both help us within our communities, and that's the so-called circular economy or sustainable self-sufficient economy. But we know we also need to be part of a global economy, and we call those traded sectors. And those are the areas where we bring in revenue from other parts of the country and the world that help sustain other parts of our economy where we cannot do everything ourselves. So the first one is near and dear to my heart. I think all of us are familiar with where these areas are. We've talked about a stronger high-tech sector, and I saw Jeannie was on here. She's been working on this for decades. But I think we can hone a little bit where we think the economic growth is today, and I've listed some of those. But there's also a new wrinkle that we've learned with COVID, and that is the number of major employers like Microsoft, like Google, like Amazon, who sent their employees home to telework when the pandemic hit and have now realized their employees can work anywhere. And my favorite news story is the governor whose son works for Microsoft, and Microsoft has told their employees they can work anywhere, and Governor Ige is trying to get his kid to come home, which is what he's always wanted to have happen. That is now a technical and economic reality. And part of that is not just bringing them home where they can pay taxes here, which we love, but if we build up this pool of those workers, those are the people who can gather together in HUIs, hubs, accelerators and incubators to create new companies here and create more new jobs here without relying on those tech behemoths. Creative media is a huge opportunity. This morning I visited the amazing new Creative Media Center at West Oahu, not quite open, but as we were talking about the industry, I know it's very active on Maui. I know the community has done a good job to welcome back some of the television productions safely, but it's not just television, and we're looking at all of these areas: music, video, gaming. Esports is becoming huge across the country. That's now become $1 billion sector, and we're looking at tapping into that here in Hawaii. But we also have the opportunity that entertainment has pivoted. Movies in theaters are struggling. People have been consuming since this pandemic their entertainment on their computers, their mobile devices, and through streaming services in their homes. And we have a chance to build a new sector that really highlights those areas while continuing to focus on movies and television. The next area I want to highlight is, I'll just call it simply green jobs. And again, without reading all the bullets, this is an area where we have an incredible competitive advantage over anywhere in the world. Our ability to develop alternative energy resources and the microgrid projects. Maui has been a pioneer in that as well, in collaboration with some Japanese companies. We can not only do great things for ourselves, the so-called circular economy, and become more self-sustainable, but this becomes expertise that we can export around the country and around the world, and certainly throughout the Asia-Pacific region. And I want to highlight also increasing interest that everyone understands now the importance of preserving our native environments. And this is understood now around the US, in the Pacific, and in Asia. The fourth sub area I want to highlight, and again, looking at both aspects of this, is food, agriculture, aquaculture. There's a lot of interest in developing our own food sources and becoming more food sustainable. And that's important, but we are not likely to ever become 100% sustainable again. And we have the opportunity to develop high value export products and crops that can help, again, bring revenue into the state, that can help support a robust economy as well. And finally, let me say a little bit about tourism. It's an area I've thought about quite a bit. I personally see us needing lower numbers with lower impact on our infrastructure, environment, and communities. And one of the ways I see we can do that is to develop some of these specialized areas. And when you look at areas like medical tourism, edutourism, ecotourism, culinary tourism, voluntourism, cultural tourism. These are opportunities for us to do two things differently. One is we can engage more positively with our citizens, directly engaging with tourists about things our citizens are passionate about, all of these areas. We also create more living wage jobs when all of these opportunities are available for our citizens to teach cooking, to share their culture, to take tourists on hikes, to teach them anything and everything, and to provide healthcare services. I think we can do better than we were doing before, and this is the opportunity to reset. Finally, the fourth area I want to mention, and I'll have just a couple slides after this. One is looking at UH research itself as an economic driver. Last year, we at UH generated over $450 million in extramural funding, and that includes my two favorite projects here on Maui, MHPCC and the Pacific Disaster Center. This $450 million makes UH research a major economic sector for the state, with economic impact and great jobs that we're creating on every island. We need to ensure that as we're looking at how we take our budget cuts at UH, we continue to support these areas of strength, which again, these are the areas that I think most of you are familiar with, where we've done well for decades, and they need to be nurtured so that we don't lose our competitive edge. We've also taken a look at the areas in which the federal government is funding, but we are perhaps not competing as well as we might. And we think we can do better in the health sciences, agriculture, aquaculture, computer science and engineering. And personally, I believe that the US government will be investing in the Pacific. Congressman Ed Case has actually started a Pacific caucus in the House of Representatives. But I think that's going to be important for security and resilience for our region. And US Indo-PACOM certainly gets this. And in doing it, we need to be doing better, all of these things, and increasing our community impact. And Vasilis Sirmos has run a program, and MEDB has been a great partner in helping us support startups, jobs, and try to bring more investment in. I think we all know this just doesn't happen without a research university strongly engaged. So UH is going to have to work differently. This is one of the hardest parts of my job. I work in an organization with about 10,000 employees, all of whom think we can either wait this out or we can cut our budget somewhere else and leave them alone. We have to do more to bring in more learners. That helps both the state, but it also helps us economically as we bring in either third-party payers or tuition revenue. We're going to have to become more effective and efficient, and nobody likes to be told they have to be more efficient. I think one of the truisms that many of my faculty are very unhappy to hear me say is that we can no longer be all things to all people. UH started many small programs over many years because we could afford them, but as we take massive budget cuts over the next, especially the next 3 years, we're going to have to focus on some things and honestly say to the people of Hawaii, if you want to learn how to do X, you're going to have to go somewhere else. And frankly, we have said that about things like dentistry and veterinarians, and we may need to add to that list so that we can afford to do what is absolutely necessary. We do have the opportunity to do more across the UH system. Our 10 campuses like to believe they're completely autonomous, but we can't afford to have every campus doing whatever it wants. We're going to have to do more sharing, and we're going to have to be investing, including in diversifying our revenue sources beyond our big two, which are state general funds and tuition. And that includes, I know I saw Donna Howard on, ensuring that we continue to invest in philanthropy. We also have to figure out how to leverage our real estate assets a little bit better. and engage with the community as we're so doing. We have to be principled, but we have to move quickly. Those of you who have been around, either inside or outside UH, know every time we propose a change, the stakeholders against that change come out in full force inside and outside the university. And we're just going to have the strength to make changes that will not be supported by everyone, unfortunately. So let me close with this. I like this slide for two reasons. One, it brings together our traditions of Hawaii, our proud history as the best voyagers, navigators, and astronomers anywhere in the world for centuries, with the modern life that is New York in New York Harbor. A second reason I like this slide is I was actually on the crew for this leg, so I'm one of those blue shirts sitting on the, or standing. Dirty little secret, we were actually getting towed through New York Harbor, but standing on the deck of the Hokule with pride. And this is the Statue of Liberty adjacent to Ellis Island, where my grandparents emigrated to this country from Eastern Europe to escape oppression in that part of the world. There's a lot to do, but I know we can do it together. So let me stop the share and turn it over for questions.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. That was, so timely, and it's wonderful to see everything that the university is doing. And you are certainly doing a lot, and you're doing it quickly. The fact that you were able to pivot at such a quick rate really speaks volumes. We have a couple of questions that came in. We just wanted to, go back. You were talking about diversification. We've been talking about diversification for years, and I know you mentioned Jeannie Skog formerly with MEDB on the call today. And with everything that we have here on Maui and in Kihei with the tech park, do you think that COVID has somehow shown us a silver lining that this remote work is possible? And is this going to be a real push toward a tech economy for the state?
I absolutely think it is. I tend to be a pretty optimistic person on most days, other than like right after I get really bad news. I think there are many lessons that we're taking out of this. I think, one of them is the realization that people can do their work from almost anywhere if they have adequate infrastructure. And I think another one is the fact that we can do distance learning almost anywhere if we have the education, training, tools, and again, the infrastructure. But I am really intrigued by this notion of these major companies that are literally telling their employees, you can work anywhere. And my friends in the Bay Area tell me there actually is an exodus from places like San Francisco, because if you can go live, in Hawaii, in Wyoming, wherever your parents are in the Midwest or in the South, that's a really interesting opportunity to move to lower cost areas that have a different quality of life. A lot of people love living in a place like San Francisco, but many would rather live somewhere quieter. And really all you need is a computer and a decent broadband connection. And for us, what I'm really excited about is finding a way to connect with our Hawaii people who left here because the jobs that they wanted were on the mainland in the hub of the high-tech industry. If we can start to bring them home initially to work for their current employers, I think they can really strengthen our local economy. So, all of you know people from Maui who, have seen their kids go off to the mainland. Just imagine if all of those could come home, work here, and then begin to start new companies here. I think that's going to be remarkable.
Yeah, well, it's the Kama Aina Come Home program again.
Right.
You know, one that MEDB has been
Right.
pushing
And the
for
new
so
wrinkle
long.
though is we don't have to find jobs for them here. They can come home and keep their
Right.
current job and then gradually move into the Hawaii economy. And we're starting to see that already.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Okay, I'm going to get to some of the questions that have come in so far. Let's see, the first one is from Donna Howard, who you mentioned earlier. She's
Hey,
talking
Donna.
about in the mid-70s, UH hosted the Education Professions Development Act program that trained and in a fast track intensive for those with BAs to be teachers in special ed, math, and science. Is this something a private funder could help you create again?
So I missed that program, so I'm not familiar with it. We absolutely have programs now for people with BAs or BSs to become teachers. And we have 1 year masters in education that gets you certification. So we're very interested in that in STEM. Actually, another shortage area, interestingly, is teachers for immersion schools. So we think this is a real possibility for fluent speakers of Hawaiian to get a teaching certification after they have a BA in Hawaiian language or Hawaiian studies. I don't want to overcommit. I have to say special ed, I'm not sure that you can learn how to be a special ed teacher in 1 year if you have a degree in sociology. That might be a stretch. That might take a little bit longer because it's so specialized. But we are starting to sit down with all 10 of our campuses to try and figure out how do we create pathways. And I think the pressure of the pandemic on us at UH is to look much more carefully at how we can collaborate across our campuses, again, largely using distance education. And we have an amazing and robust capability across all of the islands, that's including Molokai and Lanai, Hana, Lahaina, and share programs rather than have to start everything on every island.
Someone also wrote in and said, you know, do we have the ability to be, do we have the broadwidth ability to be a tech leader? Do you feel like we're at that spot now? I mean, do we have that ability?
So yeah, you hit something near and dear to my heart, and as mentioned in my intro, I actually chaired the State of Hawaii Broadband Task Force. Amazingly, it was about 12 years ago. I pulled up our final report for something, and it was in 2009. We delivered it to the legislature. So we have enough capacity to the state. Several new projects have been built that connect us to the mainland, to Asia, to Australia, New Zealand since that time. And I was in this business when the state actually ran out of broadband capacity. So that is not our problem right now. We have 2 competitive providers in most places in Hawaiian Telecom and Spectrum that provide pretty good service at, you know, typical US prices. When I chaired this thing, I was really hoping we could become a national and international leader. And as is typical with these things, we delivered a great report and almost nothing happened. I did a little bit of time with your old boss, with Governor Abercrombie, and he tried to start a broadband initiative that never really took off. We can absolutely do this. What I worry about most right now in broadband, we've got to figure out how to salvage the Sandwich Isles fiber that's really pretty useful and in the water and is tied up in a bunch of legal squabbles that you read about in the paper. You can Google that one for fun. And I also worry about 2 things from an equity perspective. And it's really played out, especially with DOE moving to online education. One is we do have rural pockets where there really isn't capacity available. I actually had federal money to pull fiber at no cost to Hana, and I could not get permission to pull free fiber onto the poles. So Hana is right now still served by microwave, and that's a limiting factor, for example, there. And there are other pockets around the state. The Hawaiian homelands are going to have to figure out that, how to recover from Sandwich Isles. The other thing I worry about is homes that can't afford broadband. And so, that's a public policy question. One is a technology and money question, and one is public policy. But, you can get broadband as good in Kahului as you can in San Francisco, quite frankly. So we don't need to let that hold us back.
Okay, great. Jeannie wrote in and was wondering if you could give an update on TMT. So kind of changing gears here a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks for the softball, Jeannie. So right now we're in what I'll call a quiet period. TMT has no plans at this time to restart construction. I am hoping that we can collectively use this time to tone things down. There are a few things going on right now. One is that UH has recently realigned and restructured our internal management of Mauna Kea, and we have shifted to a 100% Big Island-based management structure. And one of the complaints over decades was really that the astronomers at Manoa didn't really understand the importance of cultural stewardship. And I think we're going to do a lot better with that home-based at UH Hilo. We are also doing a lot of work right now to update the master plan and the comprehensive management plan. The master plan was done around 2000 in response to the scathing audit that we received in 1998, really telling us that we were not fulfilling our responsibilities to the Mauna. The comprehensive management plans are now about 10, 11 years old, and those also need to be updated. And those really lay out what we have to do to be better stewards of the mountain. We are also actively decommissioning 2 telescopes on the mountain, and I am hopeful that the tone will be a little bit different. The National Science Foundation is getting involved. Everything I'm sharing is public information. But TMT has partnered with something called the Giant Magellan Telescope, which is trying to be built in Chile. And the idea is that US would have major investments in a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere giant telescope, roughly of the caliber of TMT, the 30-meter telescope. And NSF, if they're going to build it, and I saw Mike Marbury is on this, was deeply involved in the NSF work on what is called the Section 106 consultation. And I think bringing in an impartial third party may help. And I understand that a number of the Kia'i are less interested in trying to engage with UH in the state and more interested in engaging with NSF through the Section 106 process. And that's the process that led us through to build what is now the Daniel K. Inouye solar telescope on Haleakala. I think we have to be realistic that we will never win over 100% of the population to believe this is the right thing to do. But I'm hoping we can use the quiet time to reestablish a different framework for how we look at culture and science together, not just peacefully coexisting, but actually strengthening each other. And I am amazed and heartened at some of the work on Hawaii Island, the Heihui Noa program, in which Larry Kimura, who arguably is most responsible for bringing the Hawaiian language back and rejuvenating it. He's actively working with astronomers to name the celestial objects that are discovered on Mauna Kea. It's an amazing program. We're also doing where kids are engaged in that as well. And we're also exposing high school students throughout the state with access to the best telescopes in the world here in Hawaii. And some remarkable work is going on, including on Maui as well. J.D. Armstrong and his program do just remarkable things with kids.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering that question. Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about you. You know, you are a leader during a very, very difficult time. You've had a lot of challenges during your tenure, but you know, kind of keeping on the pandemic for the first question, you know, tell us a little bit about that very difficult decision to administer the pay cuts that you have had to administer, including your own, and you have taken a pay cut that is twice more than what you're asking others to take. Tell us about that.
So we're facing a devastating budget cut, you know, the statewide, and you know, I review a bunch of the economic plans with the governor and state budget and finance, and I can see how bad it is, and I know how hard they're working, but nobody in state government will come out of this unscathed. You know, in conversation, and I want to, you know, thank our Board of Regents for also encouraging this. We really felt that we had to lead, that, you know, it's not a secret. The unions have all disclosed that the governor is talking with them about furlough programs. And I was here for the last round of furloughs during the last recession. This is actually my fourth recession, but it's my first one as president and my second as a senior leader in the institution. It was really pretty simple to say we felt like we had to lead. And if I was going to ask, we have about 200, a little over 200 executives in the university who are the leaders. If I was going to ask them to do something really hard and unpleasant, I just felt like I had to, you know, take it even more so. So, you know, I'm not the highest paid employee at the university, but I'm the most visible. And, you know, it really wasn't that hard. I know some of our executives are not that happy, but I will say this was a collaborative decision I came to with the 10 most senior, those are the vice presidents, the chancellors of the four-year universities. And there was no hesitation in doing this. And they all talked with their leadership teams as well. So it didn't come as a surprise to anyone when we made the announcement.
Thank you. You know, and as you touched upon, you've been with UH for a number of years, and you've been in Hawaii for a number of years. And earlier in your presentation, you talked about how you know, you do have to change things moving forward. But in general, maybe pre-pandemic, have you seen UH change over the years? Have you seen Hawaii change over the years? And you know, what are some major changes that you've seen that have really stuck with you?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, I've been here long enough to have seen the transition away from the plantation economy into tourism. It was already underway when I got here, but, you know, we had sugar and pineapple everywhere when I got here. And, you know, certainly that's gone, you know, with few exceptions. I've seen us talking for 40 years about the need to diversify our economy and not achieving everything, you know, many successes, but challenges as well. And certainly I think most of us who have been involved in this don't think we've gone as far as we would have hoped. I think, you know, one of the really remarkable and positive things, I think the Hawaiian Renaissance and what that has done for our state. You know, when I got here, if somebody used the word sovereignty, you know, that was not taken seriously. And I think now, while, you know, some people use the word sovereignty, whatever you believe is going to happen, I think most people in Hawaii who are paying attention believe there will be a greater level of self-determination. I think there's a wake-up call around the world about the treatment of Indigenous people, and Hawaii, you know, our history's, you know, sad in many, many ways, and there's a lot we need to do better for Hawaiians, Hawaiian culture. And one of the saddest things to me personally about the TMT situation is it really undermined a lot of the work we were doing at the university to try to, you know, the work that we've done around language and culture. We have done an amazing job of bringing in Native Hawaiian students. I think the work around sustainability that we've been doing has been remarkable, both in terms of our operational improvements. Maui College has done a great job. You know, you see the solar panels generating a substantial portion of the campus's electricity, and Maui and Leeward have kind of been duking it out to see which can become the first 100% sustainable campus. Thank you, Brian. I see you were on there too. I think within the university, perhaps one of the biggest changes, and I'll say this over the past maybe 10 years, and it's something I've worked really hard on, is our appreciation of how much better we can do as a system of public higher education than when we just think of ourselves as 10 independent campuses, each doing what, you know, it wants to do and what it sees its community needs, without looking to one another on shared infrastructure and so forth. So you know, I'm pretty proud of my part in that, but I think it's very healthy, and it will serve us very well through these pandemic years.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know for us, for Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, we partner a lot with Maui College and your international students that come through, specifically the students that come through from Japan, who, you know, come over to the center and learn about that, you know, Nisei and Japanese American experience. So we love the partnering, and we love all the, you know, collaborating that you're doing. Going back to culture and the mural behind you, someone just wrote in, can you tell us a little bit about, is it the Jean Charlot?
Yes. Yeah, this is the Charlot mural in the on the ground floor of Bachman Hall. I don't actually know much about the history. That's a great question. But so I used to do a lot of hiking, and one of my hiking buddies posted on Facebook, his father was a photographer, and his father took pictures of Charlot painting this. It came up, it's from the 50s, and we're about to renovate Bachman Hall. The roof leaks and it's got mold, and we've been putting it off for a long time because nobody likes to see the administration building taken care of, but it's a beautiful Osipov, Vladimir Osipov, the famous architect, inside-outside building, and it's been so neglected. We just feel like we have to make the investment. And I should ask them if they think they have to do any mural restoration, but they'll certainly have to protect it. But we have two of these. We have one on the ground floor and one on the second floor on the mezzanine as well. And they were gifts from two of our graduating classes, commissioned him to paint these in Bachman Hall.
Oh, beautiful. You know, you were talking earlier, or maybe it was in your slideshow, about values and how important the values of collaboration and humanity and agility are, especially during these difficult times. Is that something that the university really advocates to their students and to the leadership and to the professors? Is, you know, those values?
Well, I would say our professors don't particularly take well to being educated on values by their administration. So, but I think we, you know, in leadership try to look to those as we're making decisions. So as we looking at things like cutting programs. You know, those are, for our faculty, they're chosen professions. It's not just a job to them. If you are a philosopher, you know, that is your passion. It is your life. And not that we're looking at cutting philosophy or anything, but, you know, even having that discussion is so deeply disturbing to them that we can't shy away from those conversations, but we have to be really quite humane in how we discuss it with them, while being direct about, you know, what are the enrollment numbers, what is the performance of the program. And so bringing those two sides together has really been a challenge in these particular times. Yeah.
Well, to that point also, you know, I think, again, at the NVMC, we're all about preserving those stories and the sacrifices of those men, those ordinary individuals who, you know, went and did difficult and brave and extraordinary things, both overseas and then when they came back home. And you know, it's a legacy for them, and you
yeah,
know.
and it was really fun for me at UH. It wasn't until I got this job and I started getting invited to all sorts of really interesting things. But one was the first time we had a VVV celebration. We have a beautiful sculpture on campus, and I learned the story of the VVV and their work. And it's, as you say, you know, those were just ordinary students who decided they need to step up and help. They were treated badly at first, you know, it's just an amazing and remarkable story. And I've had the chance to speak to veterans groups a couple of times, and maybe one of the most, besides being on the Hokulea and getting to crew a few times, one of the best things I got to do as president was I was invited to the Oval Office for the proclamation of the naming the Honouliuli internment camp as a national monument. And UH has a small part. We actually are providing the access into the national monument. So I got invited in for that, and, you know, learning that story as well. And yeah, World War II was, you know, just the way it shaped, I think, so much of our history, and the Nisei veterans, what they did during the war, but as you say, especially when they came back and really reframed democracy in Hawaii.
Yeah, I think it was the VVV is the Varsity Victory
Right, the Varsity Victory.
Volunteers.
So these were the ROTC students at UH who, as when war broke out, they went to volunteer, and because they were Japanese Americans, they were not permitted to have weapons. They were given shovels. They could dig ditches, and they just said, "We will do whatever is needed, whatever you will let us do." So they were initially humiliated before they were given the opportunity to enlist and fight for their country.
So I can't believe that we are running out of time. How could that be an hour?
Wow.
Yes, it went by very quickly. Maybe we can entice you to come on again in the future. I would love to come back to you in just a few seconds and have you give some closing remarks, whether it is, you know, what you are most proud of accomplishing as UH president, although you've touched on some of those already, or just some closing remarks of wisdom. For everybody else, we want to thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. We want to let you know that you will all be receiving our weekly Wednesday update tomorrow with a list. It's an email that will come to your inbox at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just letting you know what else we have going on at the center coming up. This Friday, we actually have a women's leadership conference in conjunction with the U.S.-Japan Council. It's a panel discussion with Meredith Ching, Sadine Ota, and Malika Dudley. So you'll find out about that in the email. And then next week, we close out the week with Grant Shun, who is the Executive Director of Halemaha on Tuesday, and then Sharon Suzuki on Thursday, the 29th. She's the President of Maui County and Hawaii Island Utilities for Hawaiian Electric. So we hope you stay engaged and check out the weekly Wednesday update. But I'd like to go back to you, President Lassner, for closing remarks, any thoughts and statements that you'd like to share with everybody.
Thank you. You know, when I took this, so I was a tech guy. I think, you know, you heard my bio, and I actually had never aspired to be president of the university. In fact, I'm a pretty ambitious person, and through my career, I was always, you know, angling. You know, I applied for promotions all the time and seized every opportunity. And I think when I was vice president was the first time I looked at my boss's job, the president, and said, I don't really want that job. I like my job better. But when the Board of Regents asked me to do this job, I also felt like I owed the university and I owed Hawaii. I came here on a one-year half-time contract in 1977, thinking I was going to go back to Illinois. In fact, it was a veteran, Fudge Matsuda, who recently passed away. I came to staff one of his pet projects from Illinois, and I had a one-year half-time job and expected to go back into grad school in Illinois. And I just felt like I've been given so much by Hawaii and the university, and that if the Board of Regents felt like I was the right person to lead it, then I should do that. I have now out-survived every president or chancellor this century in this job, which kind of seems like it is just passed in a flash. And I've come to appreciate everything that this institution does across our islands. I truly believe UH is the most important institution to shape a more positive, sustainable, and thriving future for our state. When I came into this job, we were on the front page of the paper for all of the wrong reasons almost every day. It's taken a while to settle down. I think the community has developed an appreciation for what we can do. So what I ask of you is, you know, support us any way you can. Some people can help financially. Thank you for suggesting that, Donna, for programs that you care about where we can help you. We are interested in helping people achieve their dreams through us. And I think we can do a pretty darn good job of it. And at the same time, if you see things you think we're doing wrong, let us know. We're not perfect. I take advice pretty well, I think. And I look forward to doing everything that I can, both through Maui College, but also through the entire UH system to really serve Maui no Ka'oi. So aloha and thank you.
Well, we couldn't agree more. We're so glad you stayed all those years. And thank you again very much. We look forward to supporting the university however we can. And I know there are a lot of people on this call who feel the same. So again, President Lassner, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We greatly appreciate it. And we wish you well on all the upcoming programs that UH is putting forward. To everybody, thank you so much again for being with us this afternoon. Until next time, we wish you well, a very fond ahui ho. Aloha.